Good morning, everyone. My name is Hermann Fasching, and I'm the Chief Inspector for Mineral Mines and Quarries and the Chief Inspector for Explosives. The key messages that I want to talk about today for the MMQ sector include the MMQ safety and health performance, some reflections on HROs, the Queensland Coal Mining Board of Inquiry, some commentary about SASH, sexual assault and sexual harassment, respiratory health assessments, and finally a focus on the year ahead. Sadly, since I last presented to this group, 3 workers have lost their lives in serious accidents in the mineral mine and quarry sector. I extend my condolences to their family, friends and co-workers. On Saturday, the 26th of November 2022, Ronald Selleck, an opal miner, suffered fatal injuries when he fell from the roof of a workshop. On the 15th of February 2023, a light vehicle and a drill rig fell approximately 15 metres into a stope void. The drill rig operator was rescued with minor injuries, but sadly when the light vehicle was recovered from the stope, it was confirmed that 2 workers, Dylan Langridge and Trevor Davis, were deceased in the vehicle. Disappointingly, the hazards that contributed to these fatal accidents are well known and understood, as are the controls necessary to prevent them. In the 21-22 year, 36 people were admitted to hospital for treatment because of injuries they sustained working in the MMQ sector, and for the first 2 quarters of this year, that number is already 27. The high potential incident frequency rate is a measure of the reporting culture of the industry. With this in mind, looking at the chart, you can see that the HPIFR increased for all sectors in FY22, with the quarry sector showing the greatest increase. The frequency rate for the first half of this year continues to indicate a positive industry reporting culture. You as industry leaders play a critical role in creating an environment and culture within your workplaces where workers feel able and safe to report bad news, including the occurrence of high potential incidents. This slide is a busy slide and I don't expect you to lean forward and try and read it. What you are looking at is the number of hazards by type for reported HPIs for FY22 on the left and year-to-date January 23 for this year on the right. The top 5 hazards for FY22 were fire, fall of ground, fall of equipment or material, and collision with another vehicle and electric shock. The top 5 hazards for FY23 year-to-date are fire, collision with a built or natural structure, fall of ground, rollover, and fall of equipment or material. If you accept that each HPI that occurs is an opportunity to investigate and implement effective controls, then the ongoing prevalence of many of these hazard types in the top 5 would indicate that controls implemented are ineffective and or not monitored to ensure they remain effective. The Brady Review recommended that industry adopt the principles of high reliability organisations. Let's recap on what HRO characteristics are. There's chronic unease, a reluctance to simplify interpretations, a sensitivity to operations, a deference to expertise, and a commitment to resilience. Each of us should reflect on how these principles may have prevented or mitigated the outcome of specific past incidents with which we are familiar. Professor Sidney Decker speaks about the drift into failure and notes that accidents are preceded by periods of gradually increasing but essentially unrecognised risk, known originally in man-made disaster theory as the incubation period. What do many serious accidents in the mining industry have in common with events such as the collapse of subprime lending, or a broken jack screw on an aircraft tailplane, an oil spill disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, or the burn-up of the Space Shuttle Columbia? They all had systems that drifted into failure while pursuing success in a dynamic, complex environment with limited resources and multiple goal conflicts. A succession of small, everyday decisions eventually produced breakdowns on a massive scale. To guard against drift-inducing impulses, HRO theorists suggest that we stay curious, open-minded, complexity-sensitised, inviting of doubt, and ambivalent towards the past. The critical part of understanding the gap between how work is imagined and how work is done in practice. This requires leadership involvement with managerial and supervisory visibility at the sharp end. Importantly, we should always seek to learn from others' incidents. Our first response should never be, that could never happen here because of this or that, but we should ask ourselves, how could that happen here? Following a serious accident at the Grosvenor mine on the 6th of May 2020 that resulted in 5 workers sustaining life-altering injuries, the then Minister for Natural Resources, Mines and Energy, the Honourable Dr Anthony Lynham, established a board of inquiry to look at the serious accident that occurred at the Grosvenor mine and other high-potential incidents involving longwall-related exceedances of methane that occurred in the Queensland coal mining industry. The board of inquiry made a total of 65 recommendations. Many of these were specific to underground coal mining activities. 7 of the recommendations are relevant to both coal and mineral mine and quarry operations. I will be sending out a letter along with the 7 recommendations to the MMQ sector and asking you to consider the recommendations in the context of your operations and respond to me in writing if you will be implementing them or not, and to provide an explanation of your decision along with what actions you are planning to undertake. An inclusive workplace is one where human rights and the principles of fairness, respect, equality and dignity are promoted and are part of the organisation's everyday goals and behaviour. Exposing our people to psychosocial risk is not tolerable nor lawful, and simply having a policy in place does not equate to managing the risk of psychosocial harm. Awareness and active monitoring for compliance with policy is required at all levels within the organisation. Psychosocial risk management practices must be developed, implemented and embedded throughout the organisational ecosystems. Psychosocial risk must be actively managed, and you as industry leaders need to be the driving force for this change. Respiratory health surveillance became compulsory for the mineral mine and quarry workers in September of 2022. The Mineral Mines and Quarries Inspectorate has been undertaking a targeted inspection program to assess compliance with these requirements. The inspections that have been undertaken to date have showed that industry is not complying with legislative requirements. Only 1 site of the 33 inspected had completed the respiratory health assessment for all of its workers, contractors and labour hire employees. 76% of the sites had engaged and arranged for respiratory health surveillance for some or all of their own workers. 15% of the sites had completed respiratory health surveillance for their own workers. 24% of sites had not arranged any respiratory health surveillance for their workers. 57% of sites had not considered respiratory health surveillance for contractors or other workers. And 27% of the sites reviewed were done after the due date of the 1st of the 9th, 2022. And respiratory health surveillance reports are commonly not reviewed to identify whether repeat or further testing is required, and those reports often contain unnecessary, additional and often confidential worker information. Workers requiring follow-up testing are often not aware of this, and cases of reportable disease have not been identified or reported by site senior executives. As industry leaders, you must ensure that respiratory health surveillance is conducted for all workers, including contractors, service providers, labour hire workers and others. The Inspectorate will continue to monitor compliance with legislative requirements and will take necessary compliance enforcement action when non-compliance is identified. And finally, the focus areas for the Mineral Mine and Quarry Inspectorate in the coming year will include monitoring industry investigation quality and control effectiveness, ensuring compliance with respiratory health assessment requirements, ongoing engagement with the exploration sector, and targeting specific harms such as fires, falls of ground and collisions of vehicles. Thank you for your time.